Hi, Jess. Welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for joining. I so appreciate your enthusiasm, and I've admired you from afar for a long, long time. So the opportunity to actually chat with you is so jolly exciting.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to be here. Also, been following your journey, and I think what you're up to is great. Trying to, help people become more literate around grief and find pathways forward out of feeling stuck and all that. And I think our philosophies align a lot, so it should be a really fun chat today. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. So, do you want to kick us off by telling the people who you are, what's important to you, and what you do?
Okay, sounds good. My name's Jess Simpson. I live in the Canadian Rockies right now, grew up in New Zealand. I'm here with my husband and daughter, and so, my family's really important to me. But what else is really important to me is, or I guess what I'm most interested in, is that journey towards really being your authentic self. Like, I just find it so interesting that being here in this world, on this planet, that being your true self, saying, all your ideas, sharing your light, big and bright, all of that. I just find it amazing that that's such a challenging journey for our human condition. And so I find it fascinating. And I absolutely love doing the work that my personal journey has really enabled me to be my authentic self. And, I'm continuing on. So we're going to see how far we get in that journey. But so that's what I'm really passionate about.
I can just see like your essence and your being, how it so lights you up just talking about it. And I'm really excited to dig in a bit more into the personal journey and the transformations and steps that have taken you to where you are now. So you had a past life in a sense in multisport and endurance, and that's probably the focus of I guess your journey and what we're going to be talking about today. So, can you share a bit about how on earth you got started in endurance and being an athlete and multi-sport? What was kind of the catalyst or the tipping point for getting stuck into it, and then how did you develop and learn through that?
Yes. So the old multi-sport journey is a long one on how I got into it. But basically, I kind of find myself in a position in life where I was essentially struggling. I'd wake up and it was bluebird day, looking out in beautiful mountains and Lake Wanaka, stunning in a stunning house with a beautiful husband, and, with these very stressful thoughts of really legitimately just wanting to be dead. And, I was like, this doesn't really match up what's on here. And as I grew up, it's quite interesting to me. I would often get quite beside myself, especially as a teenager, quite overwhelmed. And what I would do is when I would be in these states of, I guess, heightened stress, I wouldn't know what else to do. I would just find myself going for a sprint around the block. And I was lucky enough to grow up on a hill, so that required then doing a bunch of, I guess, running up some steep zigzags for a decent distance. That was my block. And so I guess I would find that process soothing. So here I am at a place in my life now, maybe age 26, feeling some very intense feels. I know that sport historically has helped as a soothing strategy for coping with the moment or my mental health. So it seemed like a natural fit for me to kind of jump into sport and see if I could use that as the tool to get a better grip on my mental health. And I had also had a bit of, I guess, like sporting success. Like I had, grew up doing competitive water polo, and I think maybe 2 or 3 years before I started jumping in a bit more formally into the athlete world, I'd done like a 6-day running race with a mate, and we had done quite well. And so I guess in my heart, I had this desire to run. And so I was just really following that inkling of, okay, I need to go running in some mountains. And so let's go all in and see what this athlete thing's all about.
Yeah, all in indeed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So a lot's happened even in that. So I'm not sure
Yeah.
what you want to know.
Well, maybe from that time, can you skip us forward with a couple of key moments? Because you've had a lot of you experienced and achieved a lot of success in the endurance and multisport world. But how long? What did that journey look like? Did you say you went all in? What did that look like? You just paint a bit of a picture of about going from this you having that feeling of not wanting to be here to diving all into that world.
Yeah. So it's been a colorful journey. So yeah, so basically I decided to dive into the athlete world. And for me, not really knowing what to do, I decided to get a coach. Now, in the process of me knowing that I needed to run, to actually getting a coach and starting to run, it was easily like 2 years, right? There was a lot of resistance about that. But I got to like a real rock bottom as I was describing. And so it was like, okay, I need to change something. So I was really in this, my suffering was so high. I guess that pushed me to finally overcome my resistance to change. And so, yeah, so I got a coach and all I knew that I wanted to do was win things. And so to her, and I told her that I want to start winning things. And she's just like, okay, like, what do you want to win? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I assumed something in running. She's like, okay. And so, she gave us, I had to present a log of my, my fitness, I guess, things that I was doing physically and the build up to that meeting. And I don't know, it was like 2 week count of that. And I handed it over to her and she was like, you're going to have to do a lot more than this if you want to start winning things. And I'm like, what? And so needless to say, she gave me a training program and even that was met with resistance, so my coach had a bit of a hard journey as now I had this training program that required me to train all the time. It was really annoying because I would rather just go to work and then come home and, do like drinking, I don't know, watch TV, anything else than do these things, this sport stuff that was going to be good for me when I was in a place of choosing to do it. Whereas 100% I was still being active, but often it was coming from, again, similar to as a teenager, a state of overwhelm where I would then be active then where I was like beside myself. So I'd go for a run in the forest or something. But now it was like, you just had to go. And it's because the paper said so, Training Peaks said so. And so I followed it along, now worried about being judged weak or, pathetic or something, not being able to do it. My training, like by my coach, if I couldn't do what she put out for me. And then also now my coach was asking me to do running races, which even though I said I wanted to win things, I didn't actually really enjoy being vulnerable, signed up for a race because it was, what if I lost? There'd be a lot of angst of like, oh God, I like suck or whatever. So there was a lot of motivation to follow that training along as hard as I can and do it as best as I can to try to, I guess, save my perception of self. Yeah. So I guess kind of how I went into it and got through. And, you do go in and you do find yourself winning things and then you slowly maybe they call it like your paper trail of like what you win. You kind of like getting a bit of a log. So then people are trying to get you into coming into, well, I got that. People asking me to do the adventure racing with them as they're often looking for strong females. And the running I was doing was off-road. So it was kind of applicable. And next thing you know, you're biking, running, you're kayaking, you're racing in China or something. Yeah.
It's pretty nuts, isn't it? Once you start dipping your toe in and feel what it does for yourself and meet all these cool people, such cool atmospheres at like training things and events, it's just so hard to not get sucked in. And I feel like there's possibly almost an element of more is better or further is better, and that makes you tougher. So it's really interesting to hear, we haven't quite finished off that picture yet, but the success and your racing and achievements at an elite level, I just think it's so grounding. I was an amateur athlete. To hear that from someone at your level, like basically having the exact same challenges inside your head?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there were some challenges.
Mm.
Didn't think I was going to like it, right? And then I did it, and it was like, actually, no, this was quite fun. And I guess as I continued racing, kind of this animal part of me got ignited, and next thing you know, like it was really heightened that I did want to be the best as I could in that sport. One, to sort of see what I could do, test those theories. You can do anything you put your mind to. So it was like, okay, let's see. And just to avoid any like regret of getting to a certain age and wondering what could have been. So you're kind of like, all right, let's just go all in and see here.
It's great. That it's so interesting to hear that that's what motivated you. And I wonder, were there other parts of you that were motivated by something else?
Well, those would be the main things. So originally, when I was first getting in, like as I mentioned, it was just to try to learn how to manage my mental health. As I said, like it had been a strategy for me that had proven successful. So I was like, okay, let's do that. And then at this point in time, I was balancing the training around working, which was full-time. And then eventually it was like getting too much. So I went to part-time because, training was really getting up there. And then one afternoon I was driving to do a 3-hour ride after work to up the Pisa mountain range, wrote my car off. And so that was like the tipping point of like, okay, something's got to change here. I've either got to adjust my sporting goals, like lower them because I can't keep up with this training, or I need to, ditch the work. And luckily I had an awesome boss, a couple bosses at Doc that were in full support, and they gave me a year's leave so I could, keep my job security, which is helpful in small town Wanaka. And my husband was for it. And so at that point, the decision, as I said, was, testing, you can do anything you put your mind to, learning how to manage my mental health, and no regrets. And I really feel like those were the underlying motives for jumping in. Yeah, trying to think. Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah. And from there, you went all in, like full-time training, full-time being an athlete, and then wonder if you could share some of your perhaps favorite moments or favorite achievements from the rest of your sporting career.
So I really didn't think when I started this journey, like when my coach suggested doing like a 3K run to like a swim and then another run, I was like, I didn't actually believe I could do it. Like I had a very, very limiting mindset. And so I guess low self-belief in what was possible. And so highlights for me from the sporting career was just actually really seeing what is possible. And so just really blowing past in your, previous limits you had on yourself of what you could do. And that really, really, really happened time and time again with racing. And each time you would blow some limits, then you would push it higher and higher, right? And it was just such a fascinating journey doing that. And it really allowed me to develop a philosophy of like, you can do anything if you let the mind allow it, right? It's literally just the mind that's inhibiting our ability to do anything hard. And that can be racing or, our inner healing work or whatever it is, right? It's very much, so you can let the mind allow it, what's possible is really amazing. And so my highlights, are racing along in absolute complete misery, whether that was by coast to coast or with my Team NZ adventure in China or something. And I just absolutely loved exploring like the body-mind connection at that point. And so playing around with, things that you could be thinking or saying to yourself in your head and how that would affect your whole experience of what was so miserable. So interesting. And so like for me, that is like beautiful highlights of just like getting to witness firsthand, for example, the power of, doing a mantra, saying like, I'm strong and stable, or in the zone is always positive, or born to do it, or whatever it was. And just feeling that physiological shift from complete torturous agony to feeling really happy where you are racing.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
memories, Yeah.
This. I hope this doesn't sound too creepy, but I remember whether you wrote it or I heard you say it somewhere that your mind would carry on even when your body stopped or something like that. And I was just like, I want to be like that. I want to be as tough in my mind as Jess Simson. And I mean,
Yeah.
that serves a purpose and is beneficial to a point. But for me, that also drove me into burnout in a place of, like a hole that took a long time to recover from. So I'm not blaming that on you, but it is funny that also with other athletes or intentional exercises that I work with, and I introduce the concept of mindfulness, and they're like, oh, like, ugh, what is that? But really, athletes are experts at mindfulness because you're focusing on that one thing, or that doesn't hurt, or sending strength to a certain part of your body, or using those mantras or something like that you're just sharing.
Yes, totally. Some of my strategies also, though, was using complete make-believe to be anywhere else rather than where I was. I used to pretend like when I was biking in the last ride towards Christchurch and coast to coast, like I was water skiing, being pulled along. I imagined lions running with me, lots of imaginary things, again, disassociating from where I was, right? They do say, I heard a few people, how they say, like, it's good to focus on your breath when running and all this. And I totally hear the idea of it, but for me, it was too painful. Go somewhere else and just get through this if I wasn't doing mantra, right? So I feel like it's to have a bunch of tools in the tool belt that you can draw on when things are getting tough, right? Because you got to keep it fresh and interesting so that you can stay engaged. Yeah, but along your lines, okay, well, first of all, yes, I used to study a lot of, when I say I went all in with athlete, I really did, right? Here comes fearful Jess, totally thinking that my performance is going to be judged and that validates how good I am as a human, and I'm in the public arena. Obviously no one actually cares, but I felt like people cared. And so I went all in, I did race plans. I knew exactly what was going to be happening in all the transitions, nutrition plans, what I was going to be saying to myself in certain times, what was going to be saying to myself if someone, one of my competitors passed me, all this, what I was going to say to myself when I'm really in the box, all these things, like super in depth. And so kind of like you were saying, like a lot of mental determination to push on when the body is saying no. But that determination is wonderful, and it does take you far and enables lots of amazing limit pushing experiences. But unless you're supporting the body and spirit, it's only going to take you so far. And so you had burnout, so did I.
Yeah. Exactly.
To end my career.
So before we move into that, I would love for you to share, you mentioned coast to coast a couple of times. For people, and a lot of people listening to this will know exactly what that is, whether they've done it themselves or probably know someone who has done it. They'll know that just getting to the start line, let alone finishing, let alone winning an event like that is a massive deal. So can you just share a bit about what the coast to coast is and your experiences at that race?
Yes. Coast to coast is maybe like a 256k journey from one side of, I guess, the never eat soggy wheat bix, the west side of the South Island of New Zealand, to the east side. And you kind of go along through mountain ranges. It's got, I think it's like don't quote me, about a 3k run start, 56k road ride, 33k mountain run, 15k bike, another K run, a 70k paddle, K run, and a 70k bike into the end, maybe 75, something like this. So multisport race. And
a day. A single day.
Yes. And remember me, who didn't even think I could do a 3k run and a little swim and a little run after it, right? And so My journey with Coast to Coast started with the 2-day, and I know I just retired taken that leave from my work maybe about 3 months before it. And I remember a lot of people being like, why aren't you doing the 1-day? Why aren't you doing the 1-day? Because I'm like, I don't even think I actually could do it. Like, I was still learning, right? And so doing that 2-day, breaking it down, that was helpful for me. And, even coming into the first time doing the longest day, I still didn't know if I was going to be able to do that full thing in 1 day, And so, it was a lot of training, getting out on the course, again, all the race planning and all that kind of stuff. And I guess just willing to be a little scared, to do it and give it a whirl and see what's possible. But it was no easy feat, it was challenging, but particularly the first longest day. But I really did feel like leading into that race, I had just the perfect amount of information that I needed, the perfect amount of life experience I needed, and the perfect amount of training to be able to get through, right? And I drew on absolutely every single one of it, Sometimes in the boat, I was sending gratitude to the petrol station attendant who helped put fuel in my car, whatever, just trying to, again, use any strategy I can to keep things positive, tuning in auntie's positive words or whatever, just everything you can do to get through. And it's just such a challenging, beautiful journey. Blows your mind, blows your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And so,
I don't even think that's the question, but hey, here we go.
Excuse me. So when you ended the 2-day, did you win that and then went on to win your next 2 longest days?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Epic.
Got that up. And I went from the 2-day, and then I feel like the racing in China, I just started in some teams. So China has a bunch of, at that point, very, very, I guess, elite multi-staged, staged multi-sport races in the team. Like I said, I race in Team NZ Adventure that were really quite out of this world. In fact, anything you'd heard about go into a race and pace yourself off the start line, obliterated. Basically, that start gun goes at those races and everyone's going full tilt until the end. It's just insanity. And they're very inspiring because it's so hard to do those races. And so in the 2-day, I was I have to check, but I feel like I got into China maybe the next year, or maybe I just started a few months before that 2-day. And in China, I still didn't even know if you change your clothes in transition and stuff, right? And it's multi-sporter, and you don't. But very this fast-paced, accelerated learning curve. So for me, doing the 2-day was really paramount. And I remember, I told you, getting the flack about not doing the 1-day, but it really put me in this position of I just had to really trust my process. And it's something that I have really held on to since that, is I had to trust that this was where I was at. Doing the 2-day was the best step for me to take, regardless of anyone else. And ultimately, doing that, trusting my process, enabled me to then win the longest day on my first attempt, and then do it again the following year, which I don't know if that would have been possible had I done it straight off the bat. And so even now, when I'm faced with situations, again, I just got to lean back on trusting my process, on how I do things, and leaning into it, even when, society is saying another way might be best, So that was a good from those races.
Yeah, and I love that, that lesson that you learn in endurance just applies so seamlessly to pretty much any other experience in life. And we're so easily distracted by what everyone else is doing, or as you say, what we're told we should be doing. Getting requires that knowing and understanding of yourself, and knowing what feels right for you, and trusting that that is the right path.
Yes, which isn't easy.
No, it's not.
Yeah, much easier to do what they tell you.
You mentioned before, and we'll come back to it now, about the blowing up and the endurance on your endurance journey, what was that for you and the turning point for, for me, it seemed like you had this awesome career, a cool trajectory, exciting, perhaps continuing success. And it's almost like, from my perspective, like you disappeared. And I was like, oh, where's Jess? What's going on? And then so when I saw your work pop up that you're doing now, I was just so fascinated and so curious about how all that played out.
Yeah, and I kind of yeah. um, like leading, I had a so like I think I was full time. So dived into the athletic world, endurance athleticism for a while, many years, but like full time for maybe just 3. And like I said, I was going from zero to hero. Like I didn't even get into it till I was like 27, 28, and next thing you know, you're trying to ride your mountain bike at the same pace that people have been going for much earlier have done, right? And that's intense. Like I used to find it so stressful on the mountain bike because it was just didn't really have a build up, and so it was almost traumatizing at times, because it was like such a drastic jump. Anyway, so, and then the same, even the training, like I initially got into the training, like back getting my first coach, straight off the bars, holding on to people's shoulders, drunk, dragging my toes many nights, like it was crazy. And so, and then to go and put this extra strain on the body, and again, zero to hero, doing everything I could think of to do what a professional athlete would do so I could win, because that was very motivating for me. And it took a toll. And so, maybe the last 6 months of racing before I did do my disappearing act, I just started to get like more injuries. My mental health that I had managed with sport, I had got to a point where like, yep, that was good. As long as I don't take more than 2 days off training, ideally only 1. Don't take more than 2 or whoosh, you're in the dark hole, and that takes quite a while to climb out of. But as long as I could exercise, I had that strategy and could manage my mental health and stay up, I guess, or in a good space, at least out of the hole. But then what was happening is I was getting mood swings again. I was getting sick more easily, and things were just getting harder outside the training and racing, which I still really loved. I still really loved training, and I still really loved racing. And, as I said, like, for example, biking for me was tough getting into it. I finally got to a position where I was feeling awesome on the bike, downhill, felt stronger on the hills and all this. I had great sponsors that had taken a long time to get that, but all these other wheels were falling off. And I was aware of that and still trying to do my best, but in the back of my mind, just thinking like, there's gotta be a better way, because here I am following all the conventional nutrition, training programs to the T. I've got physio, I've got massage, I'm doing everything possible, but I was still getting cooked, despite all my best efforts. And then I was just so damn lucky that I was basically taking a few months off to have a bit more of a downtime while I was in Canada training. And I decided to try Xterra. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of that summer, I was racing Xterra in the World Champs in Maui, which was cool. I had a kind of rocky build-in. I had, I was sick. My dog had died. And I went on this plane to Maui, hadn't slept, the week before leading into that race because I was just coughing so violently each night. So going into the race depleted, right? But again, in those days, if injured, sick, no matter what, you just showed up and you went for it and you utilized to the baddest, to the most, your resources that you did have available to you on that day, mental resources, physical resources, life experience. And so whilst those things were happening, I never thought about not racing. It was like, I'm just going to race. And I did adjust my goals a bit going into it. So yeah, anyways, had this blessing of an experience where showed up to the start line, like not in a shabby state, but still keen to like give it my all and go racing. And, there's the swim and then the bike. And I was trying to just have more of like an experience of the world champs, take it a bit easier. I don't know if you've done those bike rides in the Maui exterior. They're very steep. They don't really allow you to take it easy. So I was like, oh God, I actually do have to put an effort here. Anyway, so did the swim and bike, following my nutrition and hydration to a T. Rocked into the run transition. And they say on the loudspeaker that I was in like 5th place or something. And I was like, what the heck? Okay. It's like a 10K run left. And the 10K run in the exterior is like my type of Christmas for a run, because it's 10K and it's all uphill and all down. And that is my favorite. I'm not really into the flat. So I was like, okay, 5th place. Well, let's just give it a whirl for this last bit. Increase the ante. And next thing you know, engaging all my awesome mantras and pushing hard when the body says no, having the best time ever. And then boof, went passed out, unconscious, seizures, woke up in an ambulance. And it was awesome, because what I ended up happening was I had severe heat stroke, which I didn't know at the time. But it gave me the most beautiful exit, because unbeknownst to me at the time, heat stroke actually took a really big toll on my body. Was it because of all the other stuff happening before I even got there? Not sure. But even if I wanted to keep training and racing, like I went to my yin yoga teacher training straight from Maui, and like I had to use my keep on pushing when the body says no mental strategies to get through a yin yoga class for a while. And so I was in states, my brain was shaky, my vision was just permanently rocking. I couldn't, and my brain stayed shaky for a good 3 months. And I'd go out like on a walk, and again, I'd be like on an easy walk, not far down the road. And then all of a sudden I'd be feeling good, and just like a switch turned. And next thing you know, I'm like completely burnt out, totally wasted, doing my next level tactics just to get home. So it was so beautiful, because then it was like, okay, I'm already feeling like there's got to be a better way to do this top performance thing. I've got this gift of being totally wasted. I could nourish that recovery and eventually come back, but that was going to be a long process. And I just decided to pull the pin. I was getting really excited about what I was learning in the yoga world, which I originally signed up for the yin yoga because I was like, I had noticed it was helpful for me for like athletic performance. And so I was going to teach athletes. And then I got there and I was like, oh my God, there's so much more to this than having this stretch just to be better at running fast, and it was really exciting. And I kind of got into it, and it was amazing. And I never looked back, just all been trajectorying up since. And yes, definitely not in the race world.
Gosh. Yeah, you really just did leap off then.
Yes.
Off into the void.
Overnight.
Yeah. And it's so interesting what you say about your yin yoga, because when I was racing, I went to yin yoga because of the performance benefits. And similarly, a few years down the track, went and did my yin yoga teacher training because when I entered a season of grief, I really leaned on yin yoga specifically to hold me, to help me process things, to feel nurturing and like looking after myself. I just found it so powerful. And then, went to my teacher training and opened up a whole new world. But for you, it happened bang, bang, straight after one another, which is, I can say so special.
Yeah, it was super. Yeah. Loved it.
And so when, like, obviously you had worked really hard, you had these really strong drivers motivating you, and then all of a sudden that's not your identity anymore, and now you're exploring this really incredible yoga space and journey. But was there any, and it's a pretty like quick and abrupt transition by the sounds of it. I don't know whether maybe subconsciously or consciously you've been mulling it over, like, is this endurance thing the right thing for me? What might life look like beyond or after this? What was that? Was there an identity shift? Was it hard to let go, or did you just feel like this is such the right thing at the right time for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. In my life, I do had a few identity changes when I've been sort of all in on something and then jumped to something really quick, and all in and then jumped to something. And so, yeah, there's totally has been shifts of swift shifts in focus, we could say. But I guess for me, it felt really natural because it's the same thing, the same essence of what I was up to stayed the same. And that was like kind of exploring what's possible, and I guess, is it exploring what's possible, or is it exploring the inklings of, I know I need to do this, but I don't know why. So same with the racing. Like, I didn't really know, like, yes, I wanted to win things or whatever, but I don't know if you remember, but I was saying, like, before I even started training regularly, I had this longing in the heart where I knew I needed to be running long distances in the mountains, despite it not really making sense. I was like working in the city and stuff, And same before I got into ski patrol. I remember I was living in Australia and I was working on a cruise ship in the evenings, and it's like 38 degrees, sweating, and I just kept having these dreams of becoming a ski patroller doing first aid on the mountains. And I had skied, but I wasn't any good. And it was like, okay, what's this about? So I went and got my ski patrol training, so, and again, that's like an inkling. So then the athlete thing was following that inkling, and then going into, diving into the holistic realm was also just following that inkling. And initially it kind of was related to sport because I was going in to find a way of how one could maximize their performance or reach their highest potential in a way where your mental and physical health didn't have to suffer. So it was related. And I did envision myself working with elite athletes at that time. And I did work with elite athletes for a bit there. But then the more I went into the holistic journey, again, the more I learnt about the power of it. And it just seemed like, really, I guess it's come down to the essence of why I do it now. Yes, I'm helping people reach their highest potential, but it's like their highest potential, their soul potential, which is ultimately the highest potential you could live on earth. And to me, that is the highest potential you can ever have on earth, is being your most authentic, fully lit self that's confident in sharing your unique light, what you've come here to share with this world, and actually share it, and truth and all those ideas and whatever that's going to look like. And so that became more of my focus and mission. And so that's ultimately what I help people do now. So it's still their performance or highest potential related. It's just a little different.
Yeah.
So to me, whilst it's drastic, it's different, it's kind of the same. Yeah.
And you can see, it's interesting, I'm sure many people relate to that as well. Like, looking back, you can see how things all kind of line up.
Oh.
But sometimes, like, in the moment when you have those inklings, can be really hard to follow them. Like, but my brain says and my plan says this. Did you have that internal battle to actually choose following that inkling, and how did that look for you?
Yeah, to follow those inklings, like, it always has an element of risk, or it's, what is this even about? And I don't know if I've had the inner debate. Maybe as we talk, I'll be able to reconnect to CF. But I really believe in embracing the essence of adventure, right? And so, it's like, okay, athlete world, well, that's going to be an adventure. Let's just go all in and see where that's going to go. And like holistic world, that's an adventure, and go all in and see where that's going to go. And so it's like a curiosity to kind of explore things that you don't really know where you're going. Just like if you're committing to go up a mountain, or maybe mountain's a bit obvious, you see the summit, you walk to the top, but maybe you got to go through some valleys or something, and you don't know quite the route to get there. And just going and doing your best to navigate all the little decisions on the way, and just keep it fun and adventurous and curious where you're off to. And, you kind of can't go wrong because you just keep learning awesome things along the way, even if you didn't get there, It's just, yeah. So, yeah, the inner debate to whether to go for it, I don't recall that as being strong. Yeah. It was more just know you got to go and you don't know why. And even like getting into meditation. So there was like getting into yoga. That was one thing. Again, that was to, help athletes. And then eventually through various experiences with meditation, what I found was interesting reflecting on my story for this talk today was that one of my main underlying whys, I really believe in knowing your why, because often when you're engaging in something that's hard, if you don't know your why, it's harder to keep going, right? So knowing your why is helpful. And for me, into meditation, again, I had this inkling of needing to do it, and I didn't know why, and I really didn't even want to do it. It was like, please don't make me meditate. That is so embarrassing, getting into the spiritual world. Like, what is everyone going to think of me? Like, that is so like woo-woo, and that's not tough and strong like an adventure racer. So I guess here is the inner battle. Here we go.
We found it.
It's coming. We found it. And so it's just, I really resisted meditating hard, but ultimately I made a conscious choice. My why of when I was originally going to commit hard to going into meditation, more focused, was I'm going in so I can come out. And that was about, we'll call it 6-ish years ago, maybe 7. And what's fascinating, again, as I was reflecting for the story, I've come out. I really feel like I've come out of the closet, of just who I am, particularly in the last year. And I've been working at it, like I say, to embody my higher self. And I'm always feeling like I'm being authentic on this path. It's never like I'm not, right? But I know we've got a lot of subconscious stuff going on in the works of our conditioning, what we should do, what we think about ourselves, how we interpret situations. And so I continue to work on that, and I've got myself into this place where I really feel like here I am, my authentic self at like this whole new level is coming out of the closet. And it's exactly why I went into meditation. And like when I said, I'm reflecting this morning, I was like, oh my God, it works. Setting an intention is super powerful. It always comes to fruition every time. Yeah.
It's so beautiful. And I love that fresh perspective on using that sense of adventure that you get from actually being outside and going on adventures and doing cool stuff and applying that to more inner work or less tangible things. I earlier this year had a conversation with my therapist very much along these lines, and I was like, because I've been having some health and injury challenges, that means that I haven't been able to go out and do the big missions as much as I would like. And I was sharing that with her, and she's like, yeah, but look at all the inner adventures you're going on. And I was like, damn it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Like, even I had a mate reach out even like a couple years ago, like we were reflecting on our racing days, and it was so fun and so extreme and definitely an adventure and so satisfying doing those adventures. And I know there was a longing on their end, and for me, I didn't have that longing because my adventure has gone to the inside journey. I'm finding that fascinating and super challenging, but super rewarding as well, So yeah, exactly what you're saying, the adventure in the inner world. Like it's so interesting. And personally, maybe not at the beginning, right? I'm a bit seasoned now. I do remember at the beginning in the journey feeling sometimes like someone had ripped the rug from under my feet and I was flying and like landing on my cracked teeth in the ground. You just like, you don't even know how to operate anymore, which is why I don't recommend doing it by yourself. Like you think, oh, self-care, that sounds great. Oh, it's actually quite badass. Yes. Be warned. Please get support.
Yeah. So we'll get to what you do now and how you support folks these days in a minute. But tying off that endurance, and I mean, you're still badass, but in a different way to going out on crazy adventures and physically doing epic physical stuff. What is your relationship now with your body pushing physical limits, endurance, all of that? Like, how has that changed?
Yeah, it's really drastically changed. So before it was very fear driven, right? Like again, for performance, fear of judgment of how I was going to do. And yes, there was positive, like exploring what I was capable of that. But there was this undercurrent of like, oh goodness, go for it. And there was even fear of needing to train. Yes, oh God, what's going to happen if I don't? How's my mental health going to go? I'm going to be the darkest, demon around. And even fear of being fat and ugly, like even looking back at a lot of race photos, I genuinely believed I was as fat as a walrus in those, like super embarrassed, right? So definitely a lot of body image stuff going on back in race days. And so we've been conditioned to think that sport helps us manage a healthy weight. I don't actually believe that, but that's the conditioning at the time. And so yeah, some very unhealthy motivators for the level of commitment in the sport for me. And now I do movement because it's just the most kindest thing I can do for myself. It supports my hormone balance. It gets all the juices flowing, helps like lymphatic circulation, detoxification, keep my body beautiful, clean, healthy, organs good, which also helps the mental health, having those hormones balanced and stuff, muscles strong so that I can continue to play with my daughter, ripping on the ski hill, for many, many years to come, all that kind of stuff. And so it's very beautiful. It's time for me to get in nature, to connect with my surroundings. Maybe now I still don't focus on my breath, but that could be something that would be more palatable now, and
Yeah.
so do I push myself? I actually do sometimes, more so in the last year than historically. But now I'm a mum, working mum. I've got these little windows and I love the feeling of running fast. And so I do go out my door and I basically just run hard until I get back. And I'm all for it because my motive is so kind and loving. It's because I enjoy that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm smiling and nodding like for the last 5 minutes because very similar to my own journey and other people that I've worked with too. Yeah, and that shift from, for me, it was mind over body, seeing my body as kind of a servant of my mind and like, this is what you're going to do and we're just going to keep going. And if we can't go, then we keep going until we get that point. I've never fainted or went unconscious from heat stroke, but similar, getting us in pretty deep holes to now, and same for me too. Movement is a nurturing thing. It's fun. Sometimes push myself if I can, and if health and other things, stress levels, all of that kind of align and support that, but it's definitely not coming from a place of self-flagellation or fear or having to prove my worth through physical feats. None of that. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you and hear your very similar, I guess, transformation.
Yeah, it just sounds like we're twins out on the trails, the best, just for pure nourishment, joy time.
Yeah, and doing it because we can rather than because we have to or trying to prove something. It's very freeing.
Totally, yes, exactly. And just fun. And I guess it was fun back in the day, going all out. It's a different kind of fun.
So if someone else has resonated with some of these challenges that you've described, or maybe is saying, I'm in that space that both of us were in 10 years ago, and they may be feeling stuck, finding it difficult to see a way forward or a way out, what's been helpful for you, and what kind of, if you're dishing out advice, what would you suggest?
Yeah, so lots of things have been helpful. But yeah, someone's feeling stuck. Like, I think I would say, like, check your motivation. You know, let's take a little bit of time, maybe just some writing, and have an honest reflection of why you're doing something, you know, and how is it impacting you, and is it bringing joy, or is it bringing like a bit of suffering, you know, that kind of thing. And if you're thinking like, yeah, it is actually feeling like this, if we're just relating it to sport, this sport thing is feeling a bit more like a soothing strategy versus, I don't know, something that is, I kind of like what we're saying, coming from a place of love, that is why you're doing it, because you love yourself is why you are doing this movement, then perhaps it could be good. I'm not saying to not do it, because again, like I say, sprint out the door until you get home, and that can still be very loving. But just acknowledging your motivation and maybe looking at, you know, what are you telling yourself around why you're getting out there, you know, I suck, I'm useless, what are these things? And, you know, maybe being that warrior that you are out on the trails, and go and start investigating some of those thoughts. As they say, you know, a stressful thought is only stressful when we believe it. And often these stressful thoughts are just baloney. They're complete lies, but we believe it with a vengeance, you know, and that's kind of how resistance and human conditioning works. And so I guess my summary of that is, see if you can get a bit of support, you know, to help reflect this back to you, or help you explore some of your underlying motivations, and, you know, crack that can open and see where that takes you as far as how you want to go. Yeah. And I guess, so yeah, getting support, you know, as you've said before, like, we're not designed to do this alone, and you can't do it alone. It's really brutal doing it alone, and you're not going to go far or for long, you know, so it's really fundamental, I think, to get some sort of support or guidance through it, because if you've got the information and tools and techniques, it can be such a much more pleasant journey. But yeah, and then just start somewhere. Like, if you're still like, no, I can't get support, it's too weak, even though I believe it's warrior move, but if that's still feeling too hard, maybe just think of what's one thing that is loving, that you would actually find is kind to yourself, small thing, and start there doing that, and just see how momentum builds from just doing that one little loving thing. And that could be allowing yourself to rest on a certain day, or, you know, greens juice, or taking that in the morning. Maybe it's saying something nice to yourself, or letting yourself indulge in something that you love to do, but you don't do it because you think it's a waste of time. You know, all that's going to bring is fun. Do the fun thing, you know, perhaps, and
I
see
love
where that.
all of it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you touched on it, but I also want to acknowledge it as well, that if it's because I was definitely in this space, and like reaching out for support from anyone did feel weak. I didn't want to let anyone into my inner world, because I was so ashamed of the thoughts that were going on inside my head. And when I did eventually reach out to a counselor and a life coach, both around a similar time, like, it was a massive deal. Like, I felt nauseous, I couldn't eat, I was so nervous. There was just so much shame surrounding that. And, you know, it's a lot different now, but I remember that time, and my body remembers that experience as well. So, I mean, it's all well and good people like us saying reach out for support, but also acknowledging that when you're in that space, it's a first, like anything new and a first time can be hard. But I think that in particular, for all kinds of reasons, can feel really overwhelming. And I've been there. I don't know about you, but you're definitely not alone in that space.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot of shame around it. Like, I wish it wasn't the case, right? I think people would reach out sooner. You know, it is embarrassing, can feel weak, you can feel inferior. Why can't I cope, get through it myself? I should be able to do this. How come blah, blah can? How come I can't, you know? It is. It's not easy. And I actually think the act of deciding to reach out for support, no matter what that support's going to look like, just that act of deciding is a very powerful move and very healing move in and of itself. That initial decision to just see, what's possible for you. And I guess if you've got like a bit of hope that something could be better for you, or a desire for something better in your life, just seeing if you can follow that inkling and go see if it's true.
Beautiful. And following your inklings has led you to where you are now. So can you share with us what you do now, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so I'm now in a place, like I said, where I'm really helping people step into, I call it their fully lit, authentic selves. So basically just helping people take those initial steps over the resistance to doing things that are serving for us, right? Anything that typically is going to be beneficial for us, we often resist hard, and typically wherever we've got the strongest resistance, that's the compass pointing to exactly where we've kind of got to go into. So that's a good indicator. If you're resisting getting support, maybe that's a sign that you maybe should just be that bold, brave warrior you are and go jump into it. So I help people do that and basically break through all the initial resistance and committing to practices, holistic practices. We use meditation and self-care as our main tools these days. And to commit to those practices, which ultimately support these regular check-ins of self-connection. And ultimately, the more we can connect with ourselves, even if it's just a tiny little moment of, thinking your self-care plan, should I do this or that? What's the kindest thing to do here? Or is it the yin yoga for an hour or whatever, right, where you've got no stimulus coming in, so you're able to sort of process some of the experiences in your mind and let those go, and then have the space to be more aware of who you are, kind of thing. Those micro moments or extended moments to check in with yourself ultimately get you to know yourself. And so I'm helping people on that journey to really empower them with the tools they need. I say, treat yourself, to treat your body, mind, spirit consistently for the long term, so you can be yourself again. And yourself is like your highest self, highest potential is just being who you are, free of the stress, free of the doubts and the fears that is ultimately just conditioning. And so using these self-care meditation tools that really can help us work through some of that stuff. So that's basically what I'm doing, is offering mentorships and that, so self-care and meditation. And then I also am teaching Nadi yoga, which is the yoga of sound, which is sound being vibration, frequency, and light. So that's the kind of yoga I'm teaching, group experiences. And here we're using our voices and getting we're creating this very high frequency using our voice, and I guess utilizing the medicine that is within our voice and within those frequencies. When we create it, we get to experience the benefit of it. And so I'm doing those as well, which are really powerful experiences, also set for genuine growth, right? I don't take anything, in case you didn't realize, kind of like, I'm kind of all in, committed, and so pretty passionate about all of those, really, mentorship and the Nadi yoga.
That's incredible. So if people are curious, or they want to learn more, or maybe attend or join anything that you're offering, where can people find you?
Yeah, so if you're keen on maybe doing the one-on-one mentorships, you can jump on my website, which is stokedlife.coach, and check those programs out. I endeavor to make them super accessible, so they're really awesome programs there. And if you're keen to try the Nadi yoga experience, so at the moment I'm living in Canada, so lucky the locals to me in my small town here in the middle of the Rockies get to go to that. But wider afield, what's cool for all you New Zealanders out there is in January, I am teaching at NZ Spirit Fest South Island, and that's in Christchurch. And I think it's about the 26th to maybe 28th of January, and I highly recommend going to that festival no matter what. Like, it's just had such an impact on my life. And I believe anyone who goes to it, it has a really powerful impact. And if you happen to be there, please come say hi and please come to my workshop. And it's going to be just a really fun experience. So it's worth traveling to, worth changing plans for. Like, it's just such an amazing festival. And it happens to be the last one that NZ Spirit is offering in the South Island ever. So now's the time.
Yeah, wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Workshops there, you can learn from anything about nutrition to, like, if you're new to all this stuff, like going back to like what I would recommend for someone feeling stuck, maybe just go to that festival, because you'll get exposed to lots of different disciplines or practices, and then from there it'll be like a smorgasbord for you to then choose what's your flavor, which might be different to my flavor preferences, right? So I highly recommend that, and I'd love to see you there. It'd be very fun. So Spirit Fest, South Island, come.
Awesome. And we'll put all those links for that in the show notes as well. Yeah, my heart is so full. Thank you so much for sharing your incredible journey and your work, all the way from your endurance sport days to the transformations that led you to doing the meaningful work that you do now. Yeah, it's just so inspiring, and there's so many things for myself and anyone listening to take away those gold nuggets and apply those lessons to their own lives.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's always a lovely opportunity to get to talk about these things and share this story. So really appreciate you and your work and making it possible. Really appreciate it.
Yay. Thanks so much, Jess. Until next time, take care out there, and we'll see you in the next episode.